Welcome to the Your Wedding Unlimited podcast, a space where we break free from tradition, creating a wedding day totally authentic to you and your love story. I'm Abby, UK wedding planner and owner of Elegance Unlimited, here to help you plan a wedding day that feels uniquely yours. Join me for planning tips and advice, endless inspiration, and a pocket full of calm within the chaos that is wedding planning. Consider me a trusted friend, here to walk you through it all. From injecting fun splashes of personality into your day, to reinventing tradition completely, all whilst focused on building a day bespoke to your dreams and desires. I cannot wait to get started, so let's get planning. Hello, welcome back for episode 2 of the Your Wedding Unlimited podcast. We've done episode 1, we've done the hardest bit, okay? We've introduced ourselves to each other, we've met, we're new friends. This is episode 2, and we're about to dive in deeper into the wedding planning process. I'm very excited about it, if you cannot tell. Thank you for joining me. If this is your first episode, then there's only one more before this. So really, you should go back and listen to that one too. There's only one more. And then you can come back and join us in episode 2 and, join along for the whole journey from the beginning. If you are joining from last episode and you've come back, thank you so much. You must have enjoyed listening to me ramble on. So thank you. No, this is not a ramble. Let's be serious for a second. This is very important information and expertise that I'm offering you here regarding your wedding planning. So, yes, this is the Your Wedding Unlimited podcast. Okay, we're talking all things weddings. We're talking fun, personal, unique, authentic weddings that feel just like you. Just like they were made for you and your partner. That's what we do around here. Last week, we talked about how to plan for your wedding planning. And if you are thinking, well, that's not a thing, you don't need to plan for your wedding planning. I'm sure some people last week thought that too, but I did manage to fill an entire episode talking about how to do it. So there's got to be some useful information in there. So if you're at the beginning stages, if you're thinking, what on earth is she talking about? I do recommend go and listen to episode 1, how to plan for your wedding planning. We talked about 4 things that you're going to do to help yourself stay feeling confident, calm, and in control of your wedding plans. And I think it was a good one. I think it was a good one to kick us off with. I do, because it's the bare bones. We're just dipping our toes into the water of wedding planning. And if you are planning to follow along and listen to this, as you go through your whole wedding planning journey, I think it's a really good one, if I do say so myself. Now, a quick little reminder as to who I am and why I think I have the audacity to talk so much about weddings and what you should be doing to you. My name's Abby. I'm a UK wedding planner. I own a business called Elegance Unlimited, and that's what we do. We plan weddings, hence Your Wedding Unlimited. We plan fun, high energy, bespoke, unique weddings, and I wanted to share that over in the podcast space with you guys too. So that's me. That's who I am. Quick little rundown. Today's topic, we're diving in a little bit deeper. The toes were in the water last week. Maybe this week we've got just like 1 foot. Yeah. We're slowly easing our way into wedding planning. And don't get me wrong, the inspiration and the ideas, they're coming. Okay. In later episodes, they're going to be scattered in the ways to make it personal and unique and all the fun ways that I think are really great about planning a wedding and all the ways that you can make your wedding feel your own. I promise you that's going to be scattered in all of the kind of future episodes. But I really think as well, it's important to get those kind of basic things sorted at the beginning, like the bare bones of wedding planning. So, the 4 steps to prepare for wedding planning. And this week, we're talking about budget. Okay. I told you last week, I told you we were going to dive into budget a bit more, and I just couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't. We're going to talk about it today. Today, we're going to talk about how to set your budget on a deeper level than what we did last week and how to stick to it at the same time. Okay. Because they are 2 separate things. One thing to set a budget, but we don't want you to be setting and forgetting. Okay. This needs to be on your mind throughout the process. So let's talk about it. I'm going to try and make it as engaging and exciting as possible. Okay. Budget should be fun. Now, I am well aware that I may have lost a few of you there. That's fine. But, I'm not personally, I'm not a big numbers gal. I'm not good at finances and like or the complicated number stuff. Like I can plan a budget and I can stick to it and I can do all the things I need to do regarding, you know, managing that budget and dedicating it. But like it doesn't come naturally to me. It's something I have had to work on. So if you are feeling the same way, regarding your wedding planning, you're thinking, oh my God, I want to plan a wedding, but the last thing I want to do is be managing that budget and thinking about money and numbers, and it's just far too complex. It can be taught. You can teach yourself to do it at a very simple level, at least, or get yourself some help. Okay, get yourself someone like me that's forced herself to learn how to understand the basics of numbers. Okay, maths was not my favorite at school, but even so, this is another thing that you really should be doing at the beginning stages of wedding planning. Okay. This isn't something you should be thinking about halfway through when you've already spent thousands of pounds. It's not something that you should be thinking about at the end. You might be reminiscing, thinking, oh, we really should have put that budget in place and thought about where the money was going. If you've overspent, you might be thinking that. But we don't want you to get to that stage. Okay. We want you to think about it from the very beginning. So, one thing to remember, you both got to agree on it. Okay. You're marrying each other. This is a partnership. You're both involved. You've got to be on the same page. You have to agree on that number. And this is where that compromise comes in. You've got to compromise. One of you, you might be compromising. You might both actually be on the same page. And you might be like, we both want to spend £30,000 on our wedding. And there's no qualms, no disagreements, no nothing. Fantastic. You're one of the lucky ones. Consider yourselves lucky and carry on. Okay. But for most of us, there might be some discussion that needs to happen there. There might be a bit of back and forth. There might be some kind of, looking at life and the reality of things and doing a bit of working out in that process. That's fine. Okay. But the important thing is that you both have to agree. Now, we're going to split this episode into like 3 little sections about budget. Okay. 3 kind of talking points that we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to talk about is setting the budget. It's the most obvious place to start, right? So you're going to ask yourselves a few questions whenever you sit down to talk about your budget. The first thing you're going to ask yourselves is how much do each of you want to spend? Okay. And it might be different for each of you, but write down each of you how much you want to spend. The next question you're going to ask yourselves is how much can you afford to spend? And this is when you've taken that dream number and now you're bringing it down a level. We're kind of narrowing down. We're getting closer to the actual number we're going to choose. We're making it realistic. It's not a fun word. Doesn't sound exciting. Nobody wants to be realistic. Okay. We want to have big dreams and exciting and we want to just have all these big magical visions. I get it. I do. But this is the one time you got to be realistic because the money's got to come from somewhere. Okay. When you've got those numbers, do they match? Does your dream number and the amount that you can afford to spend match? If they do, again, fantastic. You must be very on top of it with all your numbers and budgeting. You're one of the lucky ones. I'll say it again. But if they don't, and they likely don't, you might, for example, say, we want to spend £50,000 on our wedding. That's a nice big number, a nice, decent sized luxury style wedding. Okay. Your realistic number, when you've actually thought about it and thought, okay, well, actually, we have this much saved and we want to spend this and kind of think it makes sense, really, because of the other things we're saving for. Maybe you're saving for a house. Maybe you want this big holiday. Maybe you've got kids or cars that need repairing and things like that. And you're thinking, actually, maybe we should be looking to spend more about 30, 35. Okay, so they're different. Fine. But the one that you need to stick with is that realistic number. Agree on it, compromise if needed. Find a number that fits right for both of you and that is realistic, that's not going to put you out on the streets tomorrow. Okay. And the next question you're going to ask yourselves is, do you have that money right now? So if you do have that money, you have £30,000 saved. Excellent. Your work is done. If you don't, then how much do you need to save? And how long do you need to be able to get there? You might need to reevaluate until you land on a number that works. But at the same time, if you have £30,000 already and you said, well, we're both happy to spend that, you're not planning on getting married for another 3 years, maybe you could say, okay, well, we've got £30,000 now. We'll work with that. We'll save some more along the way and we might be able to add that in later on. Adding money that you have and that you're happy to add in is fine. What we don't want to do is set ourselves an unachievable goal of £30,000 when we've only got £10,000 and we've got 2 years to try and save it. Well, that's just not going to happen, is it? You need to bring it way down and be realistic. Please don't bankrupt yourself for a wedding. It's not worth it. Please don't, put yourself into real financial trouble. Keep it realistic for you. This is supposed to be a magical day that when it's over and you're married, you still think of it as magical. You're not then looking at your bank thinking, oh my God, what have we done? We're in big trouble. I don't want that for any of you. It makes me sad, okay? And don't get me wrong, I said this last week. There is no judgment from me if anybody does get in that situation. There's no judgment from me if anybody decides to get a loan to pay for their wedding. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not something that I'm ever going to get involved in as a wedding planner, as the clients I'm working with, not my business. Okay. But if you're taking my advice, try not to do it. Put yourselves in a good position. Think about the future you that's going to be really grateful that you've thought ahead and been kind to yourselves with the money that you have available. And yes, do some playing around, play with some numbers, make some notes, talk about things, think about, your options. And you don't need to set it on the first day that you sit down to talk about it. You could come back to it again in a week's time and talk about it again, or in a few days, and slowly start to come together with a number that works for you. But yeah, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. The main thing is that you need a budget and you need a number to work from. You're going to find it really difficult if you don't. And anybody that says they don't find it difficult or they just can plan a wedding without a budget, you're absolutely mad. And I think you're lying. Thank you. Now, part 2 to this, I'm not going to try and kind of freak anyone out or scare anyone. I'm going to tell you there's risks to not setting a budget, okay? So if you've heard point 1 about setting a budget and you thought, no, I still really don't think we need to, well, listen to me, okay? Section 2 of today's episode, we're talking about the risks of not setting a budget. And I'm going to try and scare you a little bit, okay? Because that's my job as your knowledgeable chief executive wedding planner. All right. So, obvious risks here. None of these are going to be a surprise to anyone, I hope. But you could very easily end up spending money that you don't have, or overspending that money and not knowing, because you're just kind of throwing money out there left, right, and center. Okay. You might have, and this is like, we've talked about last week when I talked about the non negotiables and things that are really important to people. You might have a supplier that you've had your eye on for years. Okay. And they make custom wedding dresses and they're beautiful, and you've always said to yourself, I'm having one of those dresses, okay? But they are upwards of £3,000-4,000. Fine, it's doable, but you need to know if it fits within the budget, because maybe your partner, I'm going to use last week's example again of booking a live band, or actually I'm going to use a live painting as an option, because I love a live painting. And if you haven't seen those at weddings, when they do the live painting, oh my God, they are so good. I love those. So we'll use that as an example. Say your partner was, his non-negotiables, I really, really want a live painter at the wedding. Okay. And the one that he's had his eye on costs £6,000. Fine. And you've both said, no, we both get the one thing that's our non-negotiable. We're going to put the money towards that. And that's really important to us. So that's what we're going to do. Fine. So your dress is going to cost £4,000. And your partner's live painting is going to cost £6,000, that's £10,000 already. That's a lot of money. If you've set yourself a £30,000 wedding budget, actually, we're talking about as if you hadn't set a budget, haven't you? So ignore that. Ignore me. So say you haven't set a budget and you're thinking, oh, it's okay, we'll just spend money and it's no big deal. But you have £30,000 in the bank that you're not really keeping track of. That's what I meant to say. Say you've got £30,000 that you're not really thinking about. You're thinking, oh yeah, we've kind of got a figure there. There's a number there somewhere, but we're just going to spend. We think it'll be fine. It's not going to cost that much. Well, those two things, amazing things, don't get me wrong, but those two things have cost you a third of that budget already. And I'm going to put it out there, venues are expensive. Okay. Catering is expensive. When you have upwards of 40 people, 50 people, you're looking at 3, 4, 5 grand for a meal. Okay. So say you've got another 5 grand there. Your venue might cost you £10,000. That's £15,000. Put together with your two non-negotiables, £25,000. That's £5,000 left that you have to spend for the entire rest of your wedding. That's tough. Okay. This might sound really obvious to some people, but I know, and this is not me trying to patronize anyone or make anyone feel really crap about it, but this is just me to try and get across that if you're not tracking that budget and you hadn't thought ahead of time, well, actually, if we're going to spend so much money on our non negotiables, we're really going to have to cut back on other things. So maybe our venue really needs to cost us half that price. We can only afford to spend £5,000 maximum on our venue instead of £10,000. And maybe actually, if it's really important to us to have the dress and the live painting, we need to have a smaller wedding. We can't afford to pay for food for 50 people, 60 people, 70 people. We need to just have like 20, 30 people. These are the kind of compromises you have to make. And these are the things you have to be thinking about as you go through that process. I know totally that at this point in time, you are not yet going to know exactly how much everything's going to cost. Okay. It's impossible to know because every supplier costs a different amount and they're changing all the time. I get it. But what you can do is you can use your best judgment. You can Google, you can do some research, and you can dedicate that budget. You can do some planning at the start of things and kind of plan ahead for these scenarios, or even think about where that money is going to go before you are committing to it. If you're just throwing money at things, you're braver than me. I'll tell you that much for free. Okay. But yeah, spending money you don't have is a big one. And it's a tough realization to meet when you've already done it. Okay. Connected to that, another risk is that messy spending, lack of control. And remember, we've talked about the 3 C's. I'm going to keep bringing these back because I love a little alliteration, a bit of a. Is it an analogy? Don't know. Anyway, the 3 C's: confident, calm, and in control. Okay, messy spending is going to lead to that lack of control. And once you've lost that control, you are no longer going to feel confident and calm about your wedding. The stress is going to start to build up. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're just going to feel like you're not having a good time. And the wedding day is amazing. That's what we're striving for, right? This beautiful, magical wedding day. But the journey to that has such a huge impact on it. And if you ask me, it's just as important as the wedding day itself. I don't want to be planning my wedding feeling stressed and upset and anxious and just wishing that it would be over, wishing that time away, because I'm never going to be engaged again, hopefully. And I'm never going to plan a wedding again, hopefully. So I want to enjoy it. The last thing I want any of my clients to feel, or any couple to feel, is to get to their wedding day and think, thank God that we're finally here. Thank God that's over. Now time for me to start making some of my money back again. I don't want anyone to feel that. That's sad. That makes me upset. Okay. I want the process to be enjoyable for you. So keep it enjoyable. And unfortunately, staying organized and staying on top of the boring things is the biggest and best way to do that. Linking in again, these all kind of link in to each other, these risks of if you're kind of not tracking things. Yes, you might spend money you don't have. Yes, your spending's going to be messy, but you might also forget things. If you're not saying, well, we've got this much money to go towards this, and we estimate we might spend this much on this, and this can go towards this, you might get later down the line and think, oh my God, we haven't even accounted any money for the bridesmaids' dresses or for table decorations. Haven't even thought about it because you haven't been tracking it. There's no record of anything and you haven't seen it visually. We're visual people, okay? Even if you say you're not, everybody benefits from being able to see things in front of their face, and you can see where the gaps are missing. And we haven't even thought about invitations. Even if you make them yourself, it's going to cost you some money. So where's the money going to come from for that? It's, you can easily forget things if you're not tracking things properly and you haven't set a budget and you're just swinging money around in the air hoping for the best. Please don't do it. Please. And when this happens, and when things get messy and you're forgetting things and it's all a bit out of control, that's when you have to sacrifice things. That's when you will sit there and think, we just can't afford, because we've spent so much other money, we just can't afford the live painter. And we can't afford the dress that I've been dreaming of getting forever. We're going to have to go for something more lower budget, cheaper, because we've just realized there's all these other things that we haven't accounted for. So we're going to have to go for less now. And that's not fun, is it? That's not fun. It all comes from poor planning. That's what it all comes down to. And all of these things lead to stress. And what do we do around here? Not stress, my friends. Okay. We want a stress-free planning process. That's my goal with anyone that I work with anyone that I speak to about weddings. Stress-free and enjoyable. If you're not feeling that, find out why and fix it. So that was a little bit doom and gloom, and I do apologize, but sometimes I feel like I've got to be firm, okay? I've got to get my point across in the right way. And I'm just doing it for your own good. Okay. Those are the risks. Okay. And to be honest, they are meant to scare you a little bit. Because if you're thinking, oh, it's all good, I don't need to set a budget, I'm going to be absolutely fine. Well, maybe think about those things. And do you want to feel that way? And do you want those to happen to you? Probably not. So maybe set a budget. Even if you're doing the bare minimum, it's better than nothing. And I'll take it. Fine. Part 3 of this whole kind of budget conversation today is how are we going to stick to our wedding budget? So we've set the number, okay, £30,000, £40,000, £100,000, whatever you're going for, whatever works for you, whatever you've set. How are we now going to stick to that budget? Because it disappears fast. When you start putting money into things, £100 here, £200 there, £700 here, your venue's a big cost to that, all of these things, it disappears. And before you know it, you've got all these other things to do and you're like, oh my God, where are we going to find the money? This is where the planning comes in. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is you are going to track everything. Remember last week when we talked about organization and choosing your weapon, choosing your method? Track everything. Okay. Whether you're keeping it in your wedding planning notebook that you've bought, your really pretty, beautiful ribbon, lovely little organized thing. I love a good bit of stationery. Maybe you're putting it in there. Maybe you're adding it to your documents or your spreadsheet. Maybe you've made a separate spreadsheet for it, or you've purchased a spreadsheet. I know you can get, I've said spreadsheet far too many times. I know you can get some really good things from Etsy for things like that. Some good, like just buy it standalone wedding budget tracker. If you don't, if maybe you want to write everything else down, but the budget you want to keep online somewhere, maybe you do that. But choose somewhere to track it and track everything. Okay. And the next thing you're going to do is you are going to dedicate that budget to different areas of your wedding. So you can have a play around with it. It's not like a one and done situation. Sit down over a few Wedmin sessions or, as you kind of go through things and think, okay, here's our budget. And this really helps if you've got a spreadsheet that allows you to kind of play with numbers and it will show you what you've got left when you've spent this on this and estimates and things like that. Okay, so we want to dedicate £7,000 to this. We want to spend £3,000 on our food. We want to spend this on that, this on that. And it's a really good time to do that because it then means that when you go looking for your suppliers and you're asking them for quotes and you're looking for the right, dream team to come work for your wedding day, you can quickly rule out anyone that doesn't fit that category. We've allowed £3,000 for this. They're coming in at £5,000. They're immediately off the list. Okay. If you're getting in heaps of quotes and finding they're all way over budget, then maybe you've kind of underestimated how much that aspect of a wedding costs in general. But for the most part, there are suppliers that kind of fit different budget categories for different reasons. They might offer different things. They might have different experience. They might, work in different areas, whatever it might be. But it's a good one to track. Okay, have a play around with some numbers and think, oh, okay, well, if we're gonna prioritize our non-negotiables, the dress, the painting, the venue, whatever it might be, the music, the food, you have your non-negotiables, put the money that you think you want to spend on those to those, and then have a play around with the rest of it. Okay, well, we're spending more money here, so we're going to have to cut back on this. Maybe we won't be able to get the flowers that we thought we might get with this. We'll go for something lower budget, or maybe we'll DIY some of our invitations or decor or stationery instead. Likewise, if stationery is your top priority and having the perfect signage and everything else, put more money into that. Take money from somewhere else. Have a play around so that you know how to budget and use your money in a way that's going to keep you within that spend and ideally underspend. We don't want to be hitting that threshold right from the get-go. You want to give yourself a bit of a buffer because things will change. You're not going to get it exactly right when you're guessing, and your opinions might change as you go through the process. This next point is such an important one, and I'm so passionate about this, and I don't hear enough people talking about this at all. You need an emergency budget, an emergency fund, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to call it. You are going to hide 10% of your wedding budget. It might scare you, but it's for your own good, okay? And it's really, really important that you do this. I recommend it to all my clients. You need an emergency buffer, a budget, because like we've talked about in this episode and the last, it's very easy to get carried away with that spending and it runs away with you. And before you know it, you spent everything. And like we said before, you could forget, oh my God, we haven't even bought invitations yet. We haven't accounted that into our spending. Now we're going to have to put extra money into the budget on top of our £30,000 that we've said we're going to spend. we now have to find extra money to pull into it for there, or sacrifice having invitations altogether, which is probably not ideal. You want to send something out. Yeah, important. Okay. So when I say 10%, you could Google it. Some people will say 5 to 10%. I think 10% is a nice number to kind of be able to be beneficial when you need it. So if you've got a £30,000, for example, I keep saying £30,000, it's all an example. You might have a £50,000 wedding budget. Say you've got £50,000 to spend. You're going to take 10% of that budget, so £5,000, and you're going to hide it. Out of sight, out of mind. You're not going to think about it. It's not in the same money pot, money bank account that you're keeping the rest of the money. It's somewhere else. You're not looking at it. You're not thinking about it. Your wedding budget now is £45,000, for example. Okay. That's the money you have to spend. You're not thinking about that extra £5,000. That's there for an emergency. Hence why it's called an emergency fund. Okay. So you shouldn't be dipping into this straight away when you're thinking, oh, I really wanted to put this much into this, and oh, we don't have enough for this. This is for the things you forget. This is for the extra costs, and there always are. Later down the line, when you might hire a stylist that you've got a package from them that offers this, this, and this, and you say, oh, well, we are looking for this. Do you offer this? And they say, yeah, we do. It's an extra add-on that you can add on to the package for this amount of money, an extra £500. Okay, but you've got the emergency budget that could cover that later down the line if you didn't have any of your budget left. It will also cover you for extra things, last minute things that you think, oh my goodness, we didn't even think that we would want that, but actually we really would love to have that there. Or those last minute things, maybe something falls through last minute, okay, and you need to replace that, and you're thinking, where are we going to find that money from? The emergency budget. It's for just that emergencies, and we'll talk about this in a whole other time. Emergency budgets are so underrated, if you ask me, and so important. I get very passionate about an emergency budget. You have to have one. And I'll say emergency budget, emergency budget, emergency budget again and again and again until I get it into your heads. Okay. Set one. It's the least fun thing to do because it feels like you're reducing that budget, the money that you have to spend. But I think it's important, and I think no one that's ever set one has regretted it. If you don't end up needing to use it, you can use it for something last minute that you thought, we'll hold off, and if we've got any money left over, we'll get that last minute. Or bonus, you just saved £5,000, £3,000, £1,000, however much you save. We've got an extra bit of money to kick off married life, spend on the honeymoon, or just to save for something else. Bonus. So there's perks, okay? And of course, another way to help you stick to your wedding budget is to not make any rash decisions. So you might see, particularly if you go to wedding fairs or things around like Black Friday and things like that, you might see discounts and offers, and they are great. That's amazing. Obviously, we want a bargain whenever we can, but they're only good if you were already going to buy from that person. Okay, otherwise you're just spending money. You're not saving it. If there is a hair and makeup artist that you've had your eye on and they offer a discount at a wedding fair, if you book them at that weekend, you think, oh my gosh, well, let's book them then because we can get a discount. Perfect. If you go to a wedding fair or you see something online and they've got, 50% off, it would be £3,000. Now it's only 1,500 if you book them in this month, but you weren't going to book them anyway, then you're not actually saving money. And you might end up booking someone that you're not 100% happy with because you haven't thought it through. And now you're sad. Okay. What do we want when we're wedding planning? Not sadness. Okay. We don't want regret. We want confidence in our decisions. So, thinking about the decisions you're going to make, the purchases you're going to make, and we'll talk about this another time as well. Discounts and offers and wedding fairs and things like that, they're amazing. Take them when you can, when you are wedding planning, but do it with intention. Don't just be, purchasing things left, right, and center. If you've got a magician that's offering a really good discount, but you weren't even going to get a magician in the first place, well, don't buy them because you'll have just wasted your money. Okay. So think things through. Again, comes back to conversations, communication, all the important good stuff. So we've talked about a few things today regarding budget. So let's do a quick roundup of all of the key takeaways if you are ready to kind of sit down and start planning your wedding and figuring out how much you're going to spend. Let's talk about how to set that budget. When you're setting your budget, you're going to ask yourself a few questions. Number one, how much do you want to spend? This is your dream number, the dream figure. You're kind of pulling a number out of the air here. Number two, how much can you afford to spend? likely a different number. We want to be realistic, and we want to see if these two match and how far apart are they. Hopefully they're fairly close together. Number 3, do you have that money right now? If you do, amazing. If you don't, how long is it going to take you to save that money? How much do you have left to save? You may need to do some reevaluation here, play around with some numbers, find a figure that works, that you're both happy to spend, and that's realistic for you to either be able to spend right now or to save and spend when the time comes. Now, don't forget the risks to not setting a budget. So you do risk feeling that overwhelm and the stress. You risk overspending and messy spending, forgetting things even, and then realizing you have to find the money from somewhere to pay for the thing that you forgot you had to buy. And of course, the last thing we want is for you to have to be sacrificing any of your, top priorities or non-negotiables because you haven't planned properly. It is really, really easy to stick to your budget once you've set it. You just have to keep track of everything. Okay, put it down somewhere, whatever your chosen way of tracking all of your wedding information is, write it down, type it down, note it down, keep track. Dedicate your budget to different areas so you can really see where that money is going to go. Play around with some different numbers, see what might work, and just start to really think through the process of how that money is going to be spent across the wedding. Make sure you set yourself an emergency budget, take out 5 to 10% and set it aside somewhere where you cannot see it. It's not going to be a temptation, and it's there for you if you are desperately in need of it later down the line. And make sure you don't make any rash decisions. Discounts and offers are amazing, but only if you were going to purchase from them anyway. Don't be spending without thinking where it's coming from and really thinking through that intentional purchase. Now, we know that budget is such an important topic. It has such an impact on your day, obviously, with the things you're able to purchase. But it also impacts how you feel about your day, how you feel on the day, how you feel after the day with all the money you've spent. So it's a really, really important one to think about. Now, I want to know, how are you handling the budget for your wedding? Have you set your budget yet? Have you taken any of the steps that we talked about today already, or are you going to? Pop me a DM, send me a message. I would love to know how you're getting on and if you need any more support through that process. If you are enjoying the podcast, then I would love for you to leave me a little review or some feedback. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Like I say, we are just dipping our toes into the wedding planning process, into the steps that you need to take to have the wedding of your dreams. So if it's helpful, I'd love to know. And if it's not, let me know and we'll make it more helpful. If you want to talk about budgets in even more detail, then send me some of your questions. I can do another episode just dedicated to questions about budgets, or we can talk about one thing in specific detail. Let me know if you have anything else that you want to know about it. All the links and ways to contact me are in the show notes as always. And I'm really looking forward to next time. So I will be back here again next Wednesday. Don't forget, subscribe so that you can come back. And thank you for listening. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Your Wedding Unlimited podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired and excited to create your dream wedding day and those lasting memories. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I'll be back next Wednesday with more tips, advice, and inspiration. In the meantime, don't be a stranger. Come and find me on Instagram and TikTok at Your Wedding Unlimited, where I share even more wedding ideas and behind-the-scenes insights. You can also watch these episodes on YouTube at Your Wedding Unlimited. And if you're looking for even more support, come and join my private Facebook group, Your Wedding Unlimited. It's an amazing community of fun and authentic engaged couples, packed with extra tips, advice, and insights to guide you along your journey. If you have any questions or need more info, you can DM me or send me an email at yourweddingunlimitedpodcast@gmail.com. All links and details will be in the show notes. Until next time, happy planning!